Previously, we looked at this complex code for verifying transaction information. We noted with these dots that this is just one part of a much larger program. Again, we'll cover the conditionals like if and else a bit later, but for now let's just look at the operators. Originally, we had each statement on its own line. Rather than having each line represent a different check or a different operator, we could use Boolean operators to chain them all together, checking all the conditions together on one line. Here's what that would look like. Note that it's a very long line, so I've split it up between two, but in your code this would all be on one line. Originally, we checked transaction amount is less than account balance, and then we checked customer name equals cardholder name, and then we checked that the vendor is in the trusted vendors. Here, instead of checking each of those operators on different lines, we're using AND operators to chain them together. We only accept the transaction if each individual part is true. If any of those three parts are false, we reject the transaction. However, there is a trade-off here. Actually, there's a couple of them. First, we notice that with this line being so long, it's much harder to read. Even if I didn't have to break it up into two lines, chaining together all these different parentheses and all these different AND operators makes it a little bit harder to interpret. Second, note that we can no longer give feedback specifically based on which condition was false. Let's take a look at our original code real quick. Here, we could actually say whether a transaction was rejected because of an untrusted vendor, an invalid cardholder, or insufficient funds. Here, because all those different checks are taken care of on one line, we can't actually give specific feedback about why a transaction was rejected. This is a good example of the trade-offs in programming between simplicity and readability, and there is no right answer. The best choice will depend on the program you're writing. If it's important to have feedback on why the transaction was rejected, our earlier way might be necessary. If that's not needed, then I would probably argue that this way is just as good.